5 Cucumbers, a small and simple game that I bought about a month ago in my friendly local game store, and I didn't know much about it. I didn't know anything about it actually, but it was small and it seemed simple. But those are the reasons why I bought it. We were going on vacation and we were in Italy for quite a while. I'm just back, which is also why you haven't seen any new videos from me for a while. And I wanted a game that I could carry with me. I could play with my daughters, and maybe I could even convince my wife to play. She used to play more games than she does now, but then as life has become more complicated and busy, she has dropped that hobby. But I thought maybe on vacation there's some extra time, I can convince her to play a game or two. And she never liked complicated games. Such of Catan is as complex as she wants to go. So this one seemed to be, I don't know, I thought, let's give it a shot. Now let me show you the game, and then I'll tell you about how the game went with the various members of my family. The game is a card game that comes with a deck of cards that have cucumbers printed on them, although the art is completely irrelevant. What matters is the numbers. The cards in this deck have numbers between 1 and 15. The cards with the number 1 have a time 2 printed on them. You may have seen one earlier, and I'll explain later what that is for. And then you have wooden cucumbers, which are really cute and are used to keep score. This is a trick-taking game in which you want to win most tricks but the last one. The last trick, the winner is in trouble because the winner of the last trick will take cucumbers. The number of cucumbers that you have to take depends on the last card that you played. And having a lot of cucumbers is bad. The first player to go over a certain number of cucumbers loses the game and is out of the game. And at that point, the official rules are kind of like vague about what happens then. I guess one way is that you keep playing until only one player remains, but that may make the game a little long, especially for the player that was eliminated first and has to sit there while the other players are still playing. The way we play, when a player goes out because the player has too many cucumbers, the game is over, and the player or players with the fewest cucumbers is the winner of the game, or are the winners of the game, depending if there's a tie there. Now, how does the game work? You shuffle the cards and you give each player 7 cards. And then the youngest player starts the first hand, first play. Then later, whoever wins the current trick will start the next trick. Is very simple. The player that starts the trick plays a card. Suppose I want to play a play of 13 and I put it there. Then the other players have to play a card from their hand, and what they can do is to either play a card that matches or exceeds the value that they played there, or if they cannot do it or they don't want to do it, now the new value is 14, is always the highest value, or they cannot or choose not, in this case this player would not be able to match or exceed the 14, then the player has to play the lowest card that they have, which is in this case is a 6. Then you discard these cards, and the player that won the trick, will be the player that played the 14, leads the next trick. So now the player decides to play, say, an 8. And again, the players have to play either a card with an equal or higher number, or the lowest that they have. And I decide to play a 9. Now I'm the winner of that one, and we continue like this. I think it's quite simple now. That player has won the trick because in case of the same number, the last player to play the card. And we continue like this, pretty much trying to lead as many tricks as possible and to preserve our low cards, because remember, the winner of the trick is the player with the highest card. That also applies at the end of the trick. The problem is that whoever wins the last trick takes a penalty. This is the last trick. That player has a 6. Now the player has to take some cucumbers. How many, you ask? Let me show you how it works. The player that wins the last trick, if the player wins that trick with a card from 1 to 5, the player gets 1 cucumber. If the card that wins the trick is 6 to 9, that player takes 2 cucumbers. This is what happens here. If other players played a 1 card during the last trick, then the player that wins that trick takes twice as many cucumbers as otherwise. For example, in this case, this player would take 2 cucumbers usually, but somebody played that card, so now it's 4 cucumbers. And, you know, having a 1 at the end, managing to play that one is not all that easy to pull off, because that means that, remember, you need to be able to match or exceed the other player's cards every time. If you have a single one and there's a single time where you had to play the lowest card, then you're going to waste this card early on. And maybe you have several of those, or maybe again, there's a mix of luck and skill and you're able to preserve that card until the end. But it is this simple. It's very similar to other trick-taking games. You play a trick after the other. It's good to win to win as many as possible, with the exception of the last one. That is really the big twist of the game. As simple as that. You play cards, try to match or exceed the value of the highest card that was in that trick, otherwise you're forced to play your lowest card, and you're trying to keep a very low card for the end so that you can lose the last trick. That's simple. This is 5 cucumbers. I will not rant too much about, there is some hidden depth. The game is very simple. The game is very basic, but it has some hidden depth. As I played the game, I was completely underwhelmed by it. I was like, okay, what's the point? I'm just going to play the highest card anytime that I can and play the lowest card when I'm forced to. So it's completely random. It all depends on the cards that you got. And then as I kept playing it, because somehow, although I was underwhelmed, I don't know, there was something in it, I kept playing it, and all of a sudden I started figuring out ways that you have to improve, to optimize your cards, to make them work a little bit better than in that blunt way of playing that I just described. For example, you notice that it's good in the early tricks, all but the last one, it's good to win, yes, or at least, to stay afloat, but it's good to win with the lowest possible number. So if there's an 8 there and I have a 9 or a 15, it's better to play the 9, because then I'm saving the 15 for later on. At any point, no matter what the players play, I'll be able still to win a trick, and then I know that I'll be able to lead another trick. Also, the 15 I can just drop in the second to last or third to last. I'm not afraid of getting stuck with it. The cards, I would say, between 7 and 10, those are the worst ones, because those are the ones that you want to get rid of as soon as possible, because it's not that easy to get rid of them. If a player plays a high card, then the cards between 7 and 10 will not be able to match that card. But at the same time, they're probably not going to be the lowest that you have, and so that means that chances are that you'll be stuck with them at the end of the game. So you need to find every possible opportunity to get rid of them. If somebody allows you, because the card that they played allow you to follow with one of those cards, that's great. Otherwise, you want a trick spectacular with a 15, and maybe you want to start the next with an annoying 7 or 8, which somebody will easy match or exceed, but at least you got that card out of your hand. But then, as you have started a trick in a way that you think is likely that you lose, what's going to happen next? Based on the cards that the players are playing, I can get a sense of what they do or what they have in their hand, and that's pretty interesting. And then I want to make sure that if I am starting a trick knowing that I'll lose it with the advantage of being able to get rid of a card I don't want, then I have also to think about what's going to happen next. What kind of card are they going to play? Will I be able to follow up decently, or will I be forced to give up a 1? For a game this simple, again, it doesn't become hardcore, super deep, etc., etc. But for a game so simple, which is simply like play a card that is higher than, or play your lowest card, equal or higher than, or play your lowest card, for So a game that is this simple, I found it to be more entertaining than I expected. Actually, we found ourselves playing it over and over again. Even my wife played it, and that's okay. If we insist enough, she would give a try to a lot of things. But then, surprise, surprise, she asked us to play it, and that's much rarer. This is a game that, very casual, very occasional players will not only enjoy, but it'll come back and ask for more. And that, I have to tell you, it hadn't happened in a while that my wife volunteered, that my wife asked, why don't we play the game? Can we play the game? That is fairly rare these days. So that's how compelling, that's how fun the game can be. Again, if you're looking for a heavy game, like, go somewhere else, look somewhere else, because this is clearly not the game for you. It is a filler. It's meant to be a filler. But you can play with children, you can play with casual players, and it is, if I say it's not as dull as it looks, that doesn't sound like much of a compliment. But I'll be the first to admit, when I read the rule book, I thought this is going to be very dull. It is not at all. I was entertained all the time. As soon as things started clicking, I found the game to be very entertaining. Mind you, it is luck-based. There is a lot of luck. But then there are times where you were dealt a fairly bad hand, and then you realize that you still did okay, and so your strategy accounted for something. And then there will be other times in which the distribution of the cards is so ridiculous, is so absurd, that there's simply nothing you can do. But then, well, maybe the next hands it'll be luckier. Each hand is so quick that after all, if one goes bad, so be it. You're starting a new hand soon enough. And maybe, yes, there will be a game that you're simply consistently keep getting bad stuff. And then the game itself is not too long, so just play again. It is a game that is so light and so simple that, frankly, having from time to time a game that goes completely astray because of bad luck, well, it happens. But then you haven't, spend days reading a manual that was 50 pages, and then you play for 6 hours, and it all came down to a couple of bad rolls. If this game comes down to a couple of bad hands, so be it. Play it again. Maybe you'll be luckier. Maybe you won't, but who cares? Because it is a simple, light, entertaining game. It is a filler. It is a casual game. It was perfect for us because we could play it on the airplane. We could play it at the hotel. We played on the beach. I think if you look carefully, you may still see some grain of sands here. Oh, I think it fell on the table. We played on the beach. It works even well in that context. Again, not every game works well on the beach. Unlike Game of Thrones, the board game, that will not work in that context. There's a time for every game and a game for every time, I guess, with the exception of some really bad games. There is a time for fried cucumbers. For us, it was as we were traveling, as we were hanging out at the hotel, and as we were on the beach. Everybody was entertained. Everybody was pleased. Even my 5-year-old could understand the game and still enjoy it. My 7-year-old was absolutely in love with it. And the reaction from my wife, again, was more positive than I've seen reaction from her in a long time. So 5 cucumbers, very simple, very light, very basic, very economic, very minimalistic. Basic has a connotation that maybe is not the right one. Is minimalistic for sure, but within those parameters for a game this simple, this light, definitely a good game. Really, but really good little game.